Hello, Chicago. Tonight, we are here to talk about entrepreneurship. And I'm here to tell you that almost everything you think you know about this topic is wrong. Over the next hour and a half, our goal is to blow your mind, shock you, and give you some tangible takeaways that can help make you more entrepreneurial. I'd be surprised if you didn't walk out of this session inspired to make changes in your life. So let's get going. Let me start by telling you how I ended up here. I grew up in a traditional family outside of Boston. My parents were childhood sweethearts, loving and risk-averse. And some of this rubbed off on me. I went to college and law school and figured out I had no interest in practicing law. So I went to Latin America to figure out my future. Now, this was the mid-1990s when entrepreneurs were becoming celebrities back here in the US. But in Latin America and other emerging markets, no one believed they could start a company. So I had this idea to help innovators in places where there was no culture of risk-taking. But first, I had to take some risk myself. The first meeting of Endeavor with my co-founder took place at my parents' kitchen table. My parents overheard us plotting a global organization full of lots of flights. They were not pleased. My dad walked over and said, "You know you don't have a trust fund." My mother, on message, said, "Your eggs are not getting any younger." Now, it turns out my mom was 20 years ahead of her time because this week Apple and Facebook announced they were paying for women to freeze their eggs. But this was my moment of truth, and it's the one every dreamer faces. Do you do what's safe and expected, or what's unsafe and unknown? And it's that juncture between fear and hope. And I not only vowed that I would move forward, but I wanted to help all dreamers help that spot when they felt most stuck get unstuck. So Endeavor, as you heard, now operates in 20 countries. We have screened 40,000 entrepreneurs and selected 1,000 high-impact entrepreneurs for Endeavor's program. We provide mentorship, advisory boards, and access to capital to grow their business. In a few cases, we've often provided spouses. We are a full-service organization. The Endeavor entrepreneurs have created over 400,000 jobs and now generate $7 billion annually. And we've recently brought our model back to the US in Miami, and we'll soon be launching in Detroit, Louisville, and Atlanta. I've been called the entrepreneur whisperer because I love helping dreamers get unstuck. But a few years ago, I started getting these strange calls. Fortune 500 managers wanted to be more entrepreneurial. Parents at drop-off wanted help with work transitions. And I would say, you know, you can do it. You don't need a hoodie to be an entrepreneur. And it's true. It turns out the two fastest growing groups starting companies are women and baby boomers over 55. But there's more than that. Entrepreneurship is no longer just for entrepreneurs. It's a skill set that we all need today. We all need these tools for change making. So I decided to write a book, and it's a roadmap for dream making. And I called it Crazy is a Compliment, because not only is every dreamer I know called nuts at one point, but I was known as La Chica Loca for about a decade. I said, okay, we're gonna own it. And my goal with the book is to help people with dreams, even if they don't plan on launching a new company, but they just want to get ahead. And it's structured in the entrepreneurial journey: get going, go big, and go home. It turns out the biggest barriers to getting going are psychological. People will say, but I can't afford to take risk. I can't leave my job. I don't have the money and connections. But it turns out what we think about entrepreneurship, particularly regarding risk, is wrong. For starters, entrepreneurs aren't these risk maximizers. They're risk minimizers. Half the Inc. 500 companies, the fastest growing companies in the United States, started with under $5,000. Crowdfunding's making this easier. You don't need $1 million to start. Second, you don't need to go all in. Many of the best entrepreneurs, from Sarah Blakely of Spanx, many of us are very familiar with her products, she actually sold fax machines for 2 years while it was taking off. Phil Knight of Nike, the Just Do It guy, spent almost a decade doing other people's taxes. The point is, you need to wager a few chickens, but you don't need to bet the farm. Okay, so people will say, yeah, but I work in a conservative company. This entrepreneurship thing is not for me. It is. But the word entrepreneur is not a fun word. So I call these people skunks. It's named after Lockheed's Skunk Works program that built fighter jets. And my book includes many examples of fantastic skunks operating in traditional companies like Clorox, Pfizer, AT&T. And it turns out there's a pattern to making change in a big company. These people didn't run to the boss for approval or build a PowerPoint or a business plan. They saw a problem, started doing, they started solving it, they got traction, then went to the boss. They stopped planning, started doing. Entrepreneur is really just a fancy way of saying you're a doer. And all companies today need to breed skunks to stink up the joint. So the second phase of entrepreneurship is go big. This is really Endeavor's sweet spot. We are about the scale up, not the startup. And I include several chapters with my whiteboard of common mistakes, pitfalls, and tips for avoiding these pitfalls at the scale-up phase. But tonight, I just want to share 2. The first is chaos. Because at some point, whether inside a company or starting your own, you will face a moment of unadulterated chaos. And my favorite moment, my favorite story has to deal with this. It deals with a widow in the Napoleonic era named Barbe Nicole Ponsardin. She inherits a wine business she knows nothing about when her husband dies. And she proceeds to revolutionize the industry. Her 1811 vintage is said to be the first truly modern champagne. But just as she perfects the process, the Russians come invading. All the experienced wine owners shutter their doors. Barbe Nicole spots a marketing opportunity. She resolves to get the Russian army wasted. This works well, and she takes one more strategic risk. She runs the blockades, gets her bottles into Moscow and St. Petersburg, and Tsar Alexander declares he will drink only the widow. Veuve is the French for widow, and Barbe Nicole's late husband was François Clicquot. This is the story of Veuve Clicquot, and by taking smart risks and embracing the chaos around her, she became the first woman to lead a multinational. Leadership. So my vision of leadership was about being tough, projecting strength, being awesome. But my actual journey was about breaking down walls, managing a growing organization and young twins at home, coping with my husband when he was diagnosed with cancer, and exposing my own vulnerability. And I learned that leaders today need to be less super, more human. Forget awesome, be flawsome. The final stage of entrepreneurship has to do with going home, with sharing our dreams with the people we love, with incorporating meaning and purpose and values. And the last chapter is written as a letter to my daughters, because they gave me the best advice. They told me, just remember, you can be an entrepreneur for a short time, but you are a mommy forever. But I want to end where I began, and that is that entrepreneurship is not just for entrepreneurs. We all have a choice today. We can do nothing and hope that our jobs and our companies are safe, or we can try something new, take some risk. The riskier strategy is to do nothing. Michael Dell told me, today there are the quick and there are the dead. So give yourself permission to try. Allow yourself to see the world differently, then act on what you see. Be a doer. When everyone else starts zigging, start zagging. And just remember, if someone calls you crazy, they're giving you a huge compliment. Thank you.